Melanesia floats upon a bed of 11 seas, one large island north of Australia, flanked by many more islands both east and west. This region is home to not only more seas, but far more languages than anywhere else on Earth, total per person and per area. Most of these diverse tongues are unlike the large families they're surrounded by. They're called Papuan. Why are they so unique? What makes Papuan languages Papuan? First, let's spend time talking language geography to understand where Papuan people live and speak. Their language map once stretched well into central Indonesia, until an infamous 1815 eruption wiped out the trading state of Tambora, its people and their Papuan language. Today, the west edge of the Papua sphere is scattered across islands. Alor, Pantar, Timor, North Maluku, but not over to Sulawesi nor up towards the Philippines. Then we reach the shores of the vast and mountainous New Guinea, where most, but not close to all languages, are Papuan. To the east lie archipelagos, Bismarcks, Bougainville, Solomon Islands, down to the reefs and Santa Cruz Islands between Malaita, Makira, and Vanuatu. Counting and classifying their languages continues to be one of the ultimate linguistic challenges. I could fill a whole video with the debated counts of Papuan languages and families, but some other time, because behind all that, there's a really simple story sketched in colonial and even recent academic writing on the area. Papuan people migrate across these islands long ago, and settle in as kind of the original hunter-gatherers here. Much later comes this spread of Austronesian, an extensive language family, it's an understatement, whose speakers sail across seas from Taiwan to Borneo, the Philippines, New Guinea, as far as Aotearoa, Rapa Nui, and Madagascar. Austronesians introduce technology and mark a linguistic and cultural shift. Or so the story goes. Hence the term Papuan becomes useful as a residual basket for the many diverse families and isolates that have this one thing in common. They are languages in this ellipse that are not Austronesian and not Australian. Because of the sheer number of languages here, the presumably long time depth, and how difficult they are to classify, it's hard not to wonder, what makes Papuan languages unique? Well, let's study their features, and along the way, hold in the back of your mind that residual term and that simple story. One way to get a sense for Papuan languages is to listen for their characteristic sound. Despite their vast diversity and apparent unrelatedness to each other, there are some running acoustic themes. Very few consonants, and 5 simple vowels. The classic example is Rotokas, its sounds confidently represented by an alphabet of just 12 letters. This leaves the region devoid of sounds found in many of the world's languages, often missing p's or g's, rarely distinguishing l's from r's, sometimes having neither, even lacking eng, which is very unlike their Austronesian neighbors who can easily start words with ngas. When it comes not to what's missing, but what's present, 2 more complex sorts of sounds stand out to me. Their fancy names are labiovelars and prenasalized stops. The first are the 2-in-1 sounds you heard me articulate when talking about West Africa, like ba and ma. The second combine nose and mouth sounds into what is here often just the basic way you say your mbis, ndis, and ngis. These Papuan traits may have forever influenced the Oceanic branch of Austronesian from their very earliest Proto-Oceanic days. One Oceanic language even combined both of these potential Papuanisms into this one wonderful unit. Yes, it's one single phoneme. Dare I try? Wah, wah. Okay, somebody out there, please do better. Papuan sign systems are also unique. While reading more and more about Melanesia's spoken languages, I was lucky to come across research on New Guinea's nucleated sign networks, which are throwing wrenches into standard understandings of village, shared, or rural home sign. If we really want to show off Papuan features, the standouts are less detectable if you don't know the languages. That is, unless we talk grammar. I know, that means jargony terminology and examples from languages you do not speak, but to capture your attention, imagine along with me. What if your language were Papuan? How would it work? Start where most do, word order. Austronesian verbs come first, before objects, often before subjects, but Papuan verbs are final. With exceptions, there are Papuan SVO languages along New Guinea's edges. So while Oceanic languages are roughly like cooked grandma yams, typical Papuan languages say grandma yams cooked. When your language configures itself as a cooked yams or yams cooked type, other words also fall into predictable places. Austronesian VO languages have prepositions, like with yams, while on New Guinea, languages overwhelmingly opt for postpositions, yams with. Zoom in on the verb. Papuan verbs are rich in affixes, future tense suffixes, so instead of will eat, it's more like eat'll. Past tense suffixes that distinguish remoteness, like cooked today versus cooked yesterday versus cooked ago. The verb itself marks who's involved in the action. In New Guinea, you usually attach not pronouns, but an object marker before and a subject marker after. Instead of you will cook them with a lonely bare verb, try packing all of that info into you yams am cooktulia. Papuan nouns and pronouns are simpler. No plural nouns, so instead of a yam or yams, it's yam cooked, whether that means one or many. Forget cases, even on pronouns, so me is always me, not I. Unlike nouns, Papuan pronouns do have impressive numbers, including words for you, two of you, three of you, or many of you. But Papuan pronouns may do two odd things compared to Oceanic. No third persons, no it, no them, and no distinction between inclusive us, you, me, and exclusive us, me and others, but not you. That's such an Austronesian thing, but hardly a Papuan thing. When something's possessed, not by spirits, though there are stories from this area. No, when one noun has another noun, some languages say grandma yam her, others grandma's yam. Two things to note, the possessor-possessed word order, and what's called head marking, showing possession on what you have instead of who has it. Let that sink in, because possessive relationships get trickier. Papuan can distinguish many possessive classes. At their simplest, their possessions are alienable, our house is us house, or inalienable, these hands are our hand. No plurals, remember. Notably, Oceanic distinguishes these too, even like in Tahiti, well away from the Papuasphere, and it might all trace back to Papuan influence. Now that I got us tangled in a grammatical rainforest, allow me to cut out a few vines that strike my fancy before we move towards our last section today. First, don't worry about passive voice. It's not an option here. Also, negation works in unusual ways for our world, Bantu languages notwithstanding. Negatives follow verbs. Yam that cook don't, for don't cook that yam. And this may be a very old Papuanism. Languages may do double or even triple negation. What is that, like cook no not don't? Okay, consider two last distinctions involving stories and bodies. Storytellers set up events with a theme built around nouns, then chain together verb-heavy events. You won't hear sentences like, we cooked 3 tasty yams. No, theme these with so yams 3. Then distribute the rest into, we cooked them. They were tasty. And to continue the story, link whatever comes next with, seeing that they were tasty, ... This theme, distribute, link story structure strikes some as uniquely Papuan, or nearly so. Speaking of yams 3, we may all be doing math in a decimal world these days, but New Guinea is home to the less common in our modern world base 20, and to the bulk of the world's languages with rarer bases. Base 2, anyone? How about 15? Add to this the unrivaled art of body part tallies to count symmetrically up to a base, 27 in some languages, or cycle to higher numbers. So from numerals to narration to negation to no passives to possession, object-verb order with postpositions, sounds like ma and mba, and small inventories, have we found the distinctive telltale Papuan characteristics? Well, bring back our simple starting tale behind the term. Papuan means all the scores of non-Australian and especially non-Austronesian families and isolates inside this ellipse. Papuan speakers were hunter-gatherers here long before technology-bearing seafarers sailed ashore, then returned to the waves as they carried oceanic tongues ever deeper into the Pacific. We've already pulled on threads that begin to unravel this tidy tale. How many of those Papuan ingredients are also cooked into the oceanic branch of Austronesian since its earliest days? What about the west edge of the Papuasphere, where Austronesian languages like Alurese have such heavy grammatical influence in their ancestry? And in Taba, the high speech level is replete with West Papuan words. What about the east edge, where the backstory to Vanuatu involves Papuans and Austronesians arriving together on the same canoes? And what of the middle, where the Torres Strait is home to both a Papuan and an Australian language? The residual, negative, non-them use of Papuan covers up the true messiness of belonging to a dynamic language area and developing from a network of families. Hence, one author challenges us that to be consistent, Papuan must include more than exclude. Yet again, we are right back to the people. Rather than passively awaiting Austronesian expansion, these features are evidence that Papuans crossed seas, developed cultures, and spoke languages from many families, including eventually Oceanic. Influence from their food technology even extends into our lives. My last video was about how we outsiders have only recently begun to appreciate this cradle of agriculture and languages. Here we are again, starting with languages and ending with a deeper point. So let me reshare links to local voices and ways to support Indigenous efforts in the area and beyond, plus my sources. Thanks to patrons for your patronage. I hope you enjoyed one with more grammar. No guarantees I won't go back to pushing and poking at my channel boundaries, but as I do, stick around, subscribe, and hear more voices with me.